I'm going to show you how to go from a flat painting to a painting of a vibrant Palomino horse using light first so the golden coat actually glows. I'm using a yellow ochre wash as a base layer to show light and shadow. And here I'm using a Stay Wet palette, which is a plate with some kitchen toweling paper that's wet and some greaseproof paper, and I'm adding the colours on top. It keeps it wet and makes the acrylic paints last longer. Here I'm blocking in the background using different shades of green. I'm trying to cover the canvas so that I can then focus on the Palomino horse itself. So if we go back and look at the other version of the painting, some people like to draw an outline, then fill it in with colour, almost like painting by numbers. But that's exactly what kills the light, especially with Palomino horses. And then later on I'm going to show you the one mistake that makes Palomino coats look muddy instead of golden. So going back, we're going to focus on the light now. Before we even think about adding details, we need to decide where the light's coming from, and therefore, where are their shadows? So I'm just adding them in. In this other version, I'm just using one colour. I'm just blocking in a murky kind of brown colour that I've mixed all the paints. Here we're actually defining all the areas of shadow in various shades of brown. So I'm just blocking in all the different areas of shadow. It's very high contrast at the moment. You can really see where the areas of light are and where the areas of dark are. I'm adding a tiny bit of nuance here with the muzzle and then the eye and all the very, very dark areas like the hooves. We'll come back and we'll draw more details in a little bit, but here I just want to get in the really dark areas and then we start going to the mid-tones after this. But right now, here's the darkest area. So I'm adding it in, adding a little bit of shadow to the background. Now here we're going in with the mid-tone. As you can see, I'm leaving each layer to dry before I start the new layer. So this is called adding glazes. So just a very thin layer of paint going over the other layers. In the other version, I just mixed all the paint and just did it in one colour, but here we're adding layer upon layer. I'm not using the paint too thickly, which means that it dries very quickly. In this other version, I'm just adding one colour for the mane and for the tail. Here I'm actually adding the highlights, so I'm using pure white to add the highlights here. And then, as I said before, we'll go back and add some midtones, but here I'm drawing and painting the really, really bright areas and also the white markings around the hooves. Going back in, and I'm actually going into the really dark areas now. So we've got this great contrast that we can work with, adding tiny little highlights here and there as I go along, just make it look lifelike. It's all about adding layer upon layer. Now I'm going in with the mid-tone and I'm using a glaze, so I'm covering some of the areas that I've done before, so it doesn't make it quite so pronounced, so the contrast isn't quite so high. So I'm carrying on with the mid-tones, just painting on top of the layers that I've done before to make it a little bit more subtle, leaving the very dark areas dark, but also going over some of the lighter areas as well. Adding in some yellow just to show the beautiful colour tones that there are within this golden coat, but maintaining the chiaroscuro, which is the Italian word for light and dark. That's what really makes this painting work. I'm adding some details now, just of the hooves using a very, very fine brush. And then I'm going to go over some of the darker areas of the tail and of the mane, just to make it more subtle, but we can still see the foundations that we did before shining through, adding some real highlights using white here. Adding some more detail to the head area and adding some pure white to really make the highlights stand out. I'm just adding the white accents of the light. Now in the other version, I'm just painting on, or rather drawing kind of a cartoon-like details of the head. Here it's a lot more subtle. We're just adding tiny little bits because the contrast isn't as great as on the other one. We've worked to build layer upon layer. So now I'm using black to actually do the darkest areas. Really, really use it sparingly, just for the super dark areas. For the hooves as well, just to give it a little bit more detail. So notice how I'm just adding an outline to the hooves on this other version, adding the finishing touches, and then it's the same horse, just a different approach. And you can see how I've avoided muddy coat syndrome in the second one by letting all the layers of paint dry. So if you love drawing horses, check out this playlist now.